Recording now. Alright, welcome to this somewhat work in progress class. The EVE stable infrastructure. Recorded. Alright, so this is a class that I've been working on and off for the past almost half a year now, maybe a little longer than that. About the EVE stable infrastructure, or the ESI as you most commonly heard it called. I am known as Luxiana, Lux to most people. Perceptor Luxiana is just a character that's still in EVE Uni. I am a developer by trade, though mostly back-end work. My favorite languages are Go and Python. I do a crap ton of infrastructure work. I'm a DevSecOps by trade. So this isn't this kind of front end stuff that a lot of this is used for isn't usually my go-to, but I love to tinker, and I've been tinkering with the ESI since the day I started playing EVE, almost 3 years ago. I was a member of the web development team here at EVE Uni when there was still a department for that before it went more open source. I was even the manager of that department for a little while. So I'm pretty familiar with the ESI. I'm pretty familiar with a lot of things that are related to the ESI, and in general, I do a lot of tinkering. If you were to see my private Git repos, there's just hundreds of just random thought processes that lasted for about 3 days as I tried to build something out, got far enough, and then moved on to something else, and all related to the ESI lately. So hopefully I can convey some of that knowledge here, and hopefully I can do it in a not so disjointed way. So as a final warning, class is being recorded, and this is a work in progress. It might be disjointed at times, it might go a little long, might go a little short. I'm not 100% sure how it's going to flow. I tried to work out some of the kinks after the last time I ran it, but, it might take a time or two. So, we'll do the best we can. So, class rules. You can click the speech bubble on the top right of Discord class channel to ask questions. You can preface them with the queue or not. I really don't care. I'll look for them as I see them. If you want to key up and ask a question directly, feel free to. If you have that perma-mute, you're going to need to put a push to talk on your Discord preferences in order to push to talk in order to talk in the channel. If you happen to have the classroom voice activation group, for those of us who are teachers who like to just talk like I do, please mute yourself so we don't get any hot miking. That'd be really, really wonderful. Recordings permitted if all participants are informed. I have informed you, I hope. So, and I hope you've all agreed. If you haven't, you probably want to leave now. And stay safe during the class. Stocked up is preferred. There's no in-game component to this class, or don't go get blown up. I'm not your mom. I like to blow you guys up anyway, so go get blown up. So, what really is this class all about? It's about the ESI, what's known as the EVE Stable Infrastructure. And we're going to talk a little bit about tools that use it, such as the official EVE Excel program, plugin, add-on, and a little bit about how some of the third-party apps and data sources that are used side by side with the ESI. So, what should you know? I would hope you have at least a basic understanding of programming. So can we get some X's in the chat for anyone who does not have any programming experience? Like if you've never coded anything in your life, put an X in that chat right now. If you have, that's no problem. Just be aware that I'm not going to be here really teaching how to program. I hope you would have some basic understanding of RESTful APIs, JSON payloads, even though this isn't really a RESTful API. It's just good experience to have in this situation. And you should have a desire to build your own tools. Regardless of whether you can code or not, I am still going over the EVE Excel plugin, so there's still stuff you can get out of this class regardless. And the ESI used to be called the EVE Swagger interface, but it was moved to OpenAPI in 2025 in like March, I think, of this year. So Swagger did become OpenAPI for anyone who knows their API stuff. Swagger was just several generations back. They finally updated to the most recent one. Swagger, OpenAPI, there are frameworks for helping to build APIs and the documentation around them, and for people to be able the same frameworks for people to be able to access them very easily without having to write a lot of custom code. So what won't this class cover? Well, I'm not going to teach you how to program. Sorry. I get paid an awful lot of money for that. Like, a lot. I'm going to barely scratch the surface of what's possible in the ESI, right? Like, it's too exhaustive to coverage in a single class, and you've seen the range of third-party tools out there, right? It's just, there's a lot. So we'll scratch the top, so I'll give you an idea of how it works, but further knowledge is going to have to come from your own exploration. And I'm not going to talk about how to use Excel in general, just the plugin, because it's an excellent way to like kind of softly introduce the SI. But I'm not going to teach you how to use Excel because, frankly, I'm crap at it. I can write some code here and I can throw in some formulas there and I can figure out some things, but I'll be looking using way too many VLOOKUPs or pivot tables or whatnot here or there, and I'll just be upset people who know what they're doing. So, sorry, that's not really what this class is for. But we are going to start with the Eve Excel plugin. So this is an official plugin for Microsoft Office Excel that'll give you a direct interaction in your spreadsheets to the ESI and every bit of information you can pull. So first, you'll need to use the Microsoft Excel. There are Google Sheet libraries that can do the same thing, known as the GESI, but they're not always as well maintained. The GESI has been updated to OpenAPI, so you're good to go. You can use it there. And you'll need to follow the instructions that are listed here on how to install. And I'm not going to link this right this second. I do have a GitHub with a README with all these links in it that I'll have linked in the class. Actually, you know what? I will just link that right now. Just take this example app. If you look down here, all the links I'll be talking about and more are down at the bottom of that link. So I'll throw that in chat right now. But you need to install it, and once you install it, you can start to use it. Now, this is going to be some confusing slides, but I do have Excel open in the background. I'll pop over there in just a second and we'll work through some of it out. But basically, once you click on this handy EVE Online button reference right here, that'll pop up at the top of your Excel, you'll get access to these public endpoints, first of all, which are these kind of things. They're basically the same endpoints you're going to be using in the ESI if you were doing it directly in code. These are all the exact same endpoints, like character, alliance, blueprint, type, group, all these things there. So you can do something like pull down an Astero, the information on Astero, and then get more information on it from there. So let me switch my screen share. What should see here? I don't want to stop screen. I want to share screen, change stream. That's the one I want. Yay, I know how to use this. Excel. So hopefully you should be seeing Excel now. I think. Where did my Excel book go? Okay, there it is. Let me make this a little bit better. Fill up the screen. There we go. That should be a little bit better. All right, so if, let's see, I want to try to look up some information about some kind of a ship, right? So I'll hit try it out here, which if you do, it's going to pop this in here. The Dominics, you can see I already did it up here. So it's going to go eveonline.type, and it's going to use an ID number. Everything in the ESI uses ID numbers. There are no names in 99.9% of the ESI endpoints. You have to know the ID numbers, and you're going to get back ID numbers. Now, there is an endpoint that will convert ID numbers in bulk to names. You can send them, like, I think it's up to 200 ID numbers at a time, and it will spit back all of the names regarding those ID numbers. And that can also be, not only is that for types like ships and modules and blueprints and items in your cargo hold, but also characters, corporations, alliances, planets, stargates. Everything has an ID number. So you're going to be working with that with ID numbers all the time. So you should get used to working with them first and worrying about the naming of it only when you go to display exactly what you want. Question: are ID numbers unique identifiers as they're not shared across endpoints? No, they are shared across all things. These are the ID numbers for the item in game, or the person in game, or a character or planet or thing in game. So they are shared across all endpoints. If you know the ID number for the Dominics, it is 645. It will always be 645. Anytime you call an endpoint and you want to reference something about a Dominics, you're going to call 6 with an ID number of 645. So no, yeah, you're right. A character will not have a 645. Characters will have much, much larger numbers. They are unique for that, yes. But everything has a unique ID across the entire game, right? All right, so we get the Dominics. Now, the cool thing about this is If we do a simple formula, we'll do A1 because that's right there. You see all these fields that come up. Now, what's really happening here behind the scenes is it's calling the API for type. And this is all of the fields in the JSON that come back from that API endpoint. So adjusted price, base price. So I can say, hey, give me the description. And it's going to be AI.description, and boom, there's a description from in the in-game right there. The Dominix is one of the world workhorses, blah, 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 blah. If you were to show info on the Dominix, you'd see that. Could also do AI, A1 dot. I could do the group ID or the market group ID. So that's the market it's going to be in, the group in the market it's going to be. So if you want to look up the Dominix, you're going to need its market group ID. So maybe you would pull the Dominix information to get the market group ID to then go to the market endpoint and use the market group ID plus the Dominix ID to pull it up and get information for it. So it's 81 in this case, right? So a lot of stuff. You want to see A1, not the pop-up? That's lovely. Cool. I hope it's recording better than that. Let me see if it's probably because of just the way it is. Let me just take a quick screenshot and I'll throw it in chat here. Snip and sketch. Snip in 3 seconds. And here we go. It looks something like this. That's in chat right now. So it's just pops up. Going to give you all of the fields that are in the JSON response that come from it. So you can use this to basically get any of the basic information out of the game right here, straight from these types. Just boom, 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 pull them up, all that fun stuff. However, if you were to authorize one of your characters, so hopefully you can see this on the right-hand side here where it says Preceptor Luxiana, and then it's got all these functions. Oh, yeah, the formula's broken. Yeah, because it's not complete. I know. So functions, I can start pulling up information about my character. So if I hit the character card here, it's going to shut type busy because it's pulling it up, and now I've got my character data in here from the character. Here's my ID number for the character, which is extremely large, as you can see, because there's been lots and lots of characters created and more. And then if I can go, let's see, what is that, B6? Oops, that's not what I want to type. Stop. Equals B6 dot. Now I know you can't see these, but I can pull up things like my corporation, which is B6 dot corporation. But it shows even Eve University because the plugin automatically does the translation of ID numbers when displaying it. But it's not actually returning an ID number or a name. I think the corporation one might. We'll look at that in a second. But most of the time it's going to return just a straight up ID number. And then you would have to go like equals Eve Online dot corporation, and then type in the corporation ID, which would be whatever is in F6 right now, and it's throwing an error because it's not actually a value in there, but whatever Eve ID is corporation. Let's see if I just type in .id, I think. Yeah, sweet. So there, that pulled it up. So apparently that endpoint does return the actual name there, but for the most part, they all return ID numbers. So you can see how you already start to have more power. Once you've authorized a character, you have access to a lot more things, such as your assets. You can pull a list of all of your assets and all of your hangers on everywhere and what their values are and such. You can pull a list of all your implants and see where they are. You can pull your mining ledger, your orders or your order history, your skills and your skill queue, your standings, your wallet, all these different things. Most people will use Excel and this for industry jobs. So you can pull what active industry jobs you have. You can pull what blueprints you have. You can do a structure search that you have access to. You can do structure orders and orders and structures. You can pull your PI information from your character planets. Right? All of these are options that you can play with here. If you happen to have corporation roles, like director or even just some roles in the corporation, that maybe gives you access to certain things, you can pull this information from the corporation. Like if you have access to the hangars in a corporation, you can pull the hangar from the assets you have access to. You have customs offices. You can pull your industry jobs from the entire corporation if you have access to that. If you don't have access to any game, it won't return anything here. But if you do, you can pull the access. If you have the student title in EVE University, you can try this out by trying to pull the corporation wallet. You'll be able to pull the information about the Skillbook wallet. So, because you have access to that, and including like transactions in general. So, there are limitations to all this, of course, but this is the basis of how you would build anything you would need information from in-game. Rather than trying to copy it out of the game manually and put it in somewhere or maintain a spreadsheet where you just keep putting data in all day long, right? You can pull 90% of the static data and a lot of the market data and active data directly from the game itself, which is really awesome. And that's why there's a lot of cool things that go on with this. So let's head back now to the PowerPoint. All right. So you can see right here, this is what it looks like again. If you didn't catch the screenshot I dropped in chat, you go type in A1, and then it's going to give you all these fields you can pull off, right? And you can pull the description of it or whatever. And once you add a character, now we're going through the OAuth system. So if you are not familiar with OAuth, I'm going to do a quick overview of this. OAuth is a single sign-on type system, and the basic idea of it here is that you don't want to provide your login information to some random third-party site, right? You don't want to log in on some random third-party site so that they can pull your information for you, right? That's sketchy. You don't know what they're going to do. So you can instead use the OAuth, which everybody does. And what OAuth really is you're not logging into their site. You're being redirected to EVE Online's CCP's actual login page for your character, and that will send back to the site a token that is attached to several scopes. The scopes give them permission over certain endpoints, and as long as they have that token and an ability to refresh that token, which is provided with the OAuth systems, they can pull that information to their site and do whatever they want with it through the ESI. They don't have your login information. They can't log in as you. They don't know what account you're on. They only know what information is directly available as part of that character's token. You can at any point go to your account and kill the tokens that are attached to it. It will mean that any site that is using those tokens no longer has access to your information, and you can just blow it away and say, hey, nobody looks at this anymore, right? So keep in mind, too, that all of these endpoints that are available through the ESI are pretty much read-only. There's a couple of post endpoints, but they're all GETs. That means they only pull information from the game. They do not directly affect the in-game pretty much at all, except for 2 or 3 that are very, very low. So routes, open up a UI window, and email. But they're also, for the most part, they're also generally cached for about an hour. Some are a little more, some are a little less. So the information isn't 100% real time. It's going to be a little out of date. But for most purposes that you're working with, that's going to be fine. But there are endpoints such as where your character is located. So if there's a sketchy site, and even though you logged in through the ESI, right, or through the OAuth system, if you did and they have the location scope as part of the scopes you agree to give them, then they could pull your location at any time, and if they're really sketchy about it, maybe they use that to hunt you down. I don't know. That's always a possibility. All the big sites that you see out there that people are developing for use, like Eve Tycoon or any of the mappers or all those things, they don't really do that kind of thing because they want to build an app and they want that app to do the thing. They're not trying to trick you out of stuff. That happens plenty in game, just fine. So a little bit more examples here. You can pull up your character assets, and you can see that if I were to pull up my character assets, that's my Perceptor's character ID. I might find all these assets that are currently in JITA for Perceptor. So at JITA, there's all these different things that I have right there. At least when I made these screenshots. I can also pull my skills. Like so, my thermodynamic skill is at 4. My recon is at whatever, right? Just a lot of information you can pull at your fingertips through this. The reason I start with with the Excel plugin is because this leads directly into the API. Every one of these things is an endpoint and part of the JSON responses. So How do I open up market to a specific item? I saw that in some tools. Yeah, that's a lot deeper, Cheryl. So it's possible to do, but you're going to have to dig through some endpoints, and I'll show you at least the top level of it here in a moment. So now what we really get to is the meat and bones of the part that's next, and you want to use this next part about the documentation for the ESI with. You can use it with Excel and the plugin because you're going to need to know. You're going to need some way to tell what endpoints do what, and how you get the information you need. You need to be able to find that. But it's also 100% usable as a coder to program something. So the OpenAPI is a framework for generating endpoints, required body formats quickly and effectively, and making it reactive to changes in data structures on the back end through version changes on the user side. Basically, what this means is they just have a very easy system to update the documentation and for libraries to quickly change that are using those endpoints without having to do a lot of manual changing. The ESI is a set of mostly read-only endpoints that can pull information directly from Eve, as I mentioned. Information is usually slightly out of date. Most things about an hour. Some can be cached with 24, blah, blah, blah. The functions we just showed off in Excel, they're all shortcuts to call on these exact endpoints. So you can find this documentation here at developers.eveonline.com/API Explorer. So that's this. So here we have all these endpoints. So these are the same things you're going to find in Excel, and they're even going to be named the same way. Like you want character, it's going to be eveonline.character, right? So we're going to go say character, and then we're going to say, let's do get blueprints. So the actual URL is going to be character / the character ID, so that ID of your character, / blueprints. In Excel, it would be eveonline.characters, and then the parentheses, your character ID number inside the parentheses, just like a function call, .blueprints. And that would pull up whatever blueprints the character owns, right? So that's how you can get a list of all your blueprints. Now, if you're programming and you're familiar with APIs, this will be pretty decent documentation. You could probably follow it on your own. If you're not a programmer, what you're going to then see is this part down here, which is the response example. And these key names are what's going to come back. So item ID will be, so you could go eveonline.characters, your character ID, .blueprints, .item, and it's going to list all of them in a bunch of different rows. And then you can use one of those rows and go .item ID, and you get the ID off it. Or the a location ID, which is going to be a system or a station ID, actually, probably. Quantity run. So actually, let's go ahead and try that out, right? I don't know if Perceptor has any scope hooks. Let me check that. Let's find out. Let's change back over to this. So we've got Perceptor right here, right? So we can go equals B6. So we pulled up Perceptor, and we're going to go blueprints. Oh, nope, that's the wrong one, right? That's not what we want, because this is the character card. So let's see here. If we go over here real quick, we'll go functions. And I don't see blueprints in there. So we're going to switch to transactions. I don't know what transactions Perceptors had. I barely used the market on their mill. So these were things I bought recently. I bought a Galente shuttle recently. I bought a Google Compact Energy Nosferatu. So if I go equals B8 dot, let's do location, comes back as Gita. Okay. So apparently that's where that is. Similarly, you can go here. So we use what we use here. We used character wallet transactions is the name of it, is the actual name of the one we used. So if I switch back to the API documentation. Okay, so we're going to go character. Let's see, wallet. Here we go. We're going to wallet and get wallet transactions. So characters, character ID, wallet transactions. So they shorten some things in the Excel, but you can still use this to have an idea of what you might need then. But regardless, this is still going to be very similar in the return. So the date that I bought it, did I buy it? Is it personal buy or was it a corporal buy? Where is it? Location, transaction ID, all that kind of stuff is going to come back from here. You can also use this site directly to test these out. So if I go to one of these public ones in Universe, I can go to, let's get planet information. I don't know the, let's do, let's do get types. And then I can do send API request. And we're going to see type ID is a starred, so it needs to be there. And we know, what was it, 645 for the Dominics? Send API request. Here's the response. Yep, this is the Dominics. Press D. And these are all the things that came back. And we'll talk about some of this attribute ID value stuff in a little bit, because that's an interesting other subject. But basically, same idea. You can try it out for the public ones. And if you were to hit authorize here, you can authorize, log in, and accept the scopes. Now here's the scopes I talked about. Each one of these is an endpoint. So if I have somebody log in through an SSO through the OAuth, and it then tells me when I logged in that I'm going to give it read corporation kill mails volume v1 and kill mails read vol v1, that means it can use those endpoints. Whatever I just logged into and gave my token to, it can use those endpoints. So, for instance, markets. If I was to click markets here, it could read my orders, it could read my corporation orders, and it could read what structure markets I have access to and what's in those. So, again, information that you're providing, but you will always see exactly what scopes it's going to ask for. And for the most part, when you log into a third-party app, it's not going to request all of these. Now, some do. Like, for example, if you're logging into AllianceSoft for another corporation and you member audit, it's going to request all of these because they're looking for spies and stuff. They want to see everything they can see, right? But like Zkill, if you log into Zkill and give it access to it's only going to ask for access to your kill mails. Like, that's all it cares about. It doesn't care about anything else. It just wants to get your kill mail information. So, to answer your question, Cheryl, there, how do I open a market to a specific item? It's a bit more complex than just one thing, unfortunately. You're going to go to the market, and then you're going to say, depends on what you want. Like, so do you want to list market prices? Okay, we can go list market prices, but this is literally going to pull everything for every type ID currently out there. It's going to give you a very long response, and it's going to have to call it multiple times because it's got a limit on how many you can send at once. But you could ask for orders in a specific structure if you knew the structure ID, right? So once you figure out the structure ID, which is not always easy, but let's say you figure that out, then you can ask for the orders directly in that structure ID. You could also ask for orders in a region. This is what most of the market sites use. For example, it'll pull all the orders in the the forge, right? That's where GDA is, right? Or you could list type IDs, type IDs that have active orders in the region. So you could pull all the active orders, and it's going to tell you all the IDs that have an active order there, right? They're very broad, these ones are. So when you're looking at a website that does stuff for you, they have usually taken all that information, processed it, and then given you access to it in smaller bits and pieces. I am not a market person, so there may be more to this that I do not know. But there's more I do know that we'll talk about here in just a second. So the other thing, if you're going to be doing your own app, if you're going to be writing your own code, not inside Excel, but outside of Excel, writing your own app, writing your own code, and you want people to log into that to get their scopes because they're going to use their personal information for something in the app, then you need to set up a developer app as well. And that is basically saying, hey, here's a client ID and a client secret, and this is who I am. And when you log in, the system's going to verify that it's going back to me, that I said it's going to go back to, and that in general, you're going to need more information, or you're going to know who is using the app. What's the easiest way to look for something by name? Yeah, so there's unfortunately not really an easy way to look for something by name. You need a couple of pieces of information, and I'll get to that in just a moment. So I mentioned data structure return. ID numbers. Everything in Eve has an ID number from every module type to every corporation except more. More often than not, the ESI just returns the request ID numbers. So you have to know how to convert them, which I think is partially what you're asking for, Titus, but there's more to that. So the ESI endpoints of universe/IDs and universe/names are the endpoints that can convert a name to an ID and ID to names, respectively. So we pop back over here. We go to universe. And we go, these two are the only two in here that are posts. That means they send information to the server. They don't just retrieve it. So we're going to go here. And we're going to let's type in Preceptor Luxiana. Let's also type in, as a comma separated list here, let's type in Astero. And let's type in Nice. See what all it comes back with, right? So we hit send API request. All right. So this responds with characters. There's a character named Astero. This is its ID number. There's a character named Nice. That's its ID number. And there's me, and there's my ID number. There's also inventory types. There's the Astero, which is the ship, and there's Nice, which is the rock. Now, if I was to go the opposite way, let's say I only have this ID number, I don't have anything else, I can come over here to this one, to universe/names. I can just put the ID number in there, hit send request. It's going to come back. It's a character with the ID number and the name of this. So that's how you can look up direct names, or if you only have the ID numbers, you can look up the other way. You're going to use the pair of these to convert from names to the ID numbers, to then use those ID numbers throughout the rest of your calls, or when those calls come back, to convert those ID numbers into actual names so you can display them and know what the heck you're looking at. These two are going to be a bulk of them. And you can, like I said, you can send, like, I think up to 200, and it says 1,000 items. Okay, so up to 1,000 items in there. And so I could just comma, send another ID number, comma, send another ID number. In my own apps, what I often do is I will pull all the ID numbers from all the responses when I'm done with whatever I'm doing, and I'll send them in bulk at once, and I'll make a map for ID number to name and save them. So I cache them for the future, so I don't have to do that again. There are also libraries that do a lot of this for you. So there are also libraries that will do a lot of this for you. And there's another piece of software that we can use here. We have the SDE, the static data export. So we come up here, we've got applications, I think, no, documentation, static data. So the static data export is a set of YAML files that is updated usually sometime after a major patch, not always right away, but usually pretty fast. And it contains all of the data that really doesn't ever change. It may change in different versions of the SDE, but it doesn't change in game. So you're talking stats on your ships, right? Your actual base stats for your ship don't change. Your modules, they don't change. Your skills may change them in game, but the actual base stat doesn't change. Or planets, names, they don't change in game unless there's a patch, right? The SDE is all of this information. Now, it comes in YAMLs, and it's all ID numbers. There's names in there too, but they're a pain in the butt to find, and if you don't know what you're doing, it's a pain in the butt to get through the YAML or the JSON. I guess they have a JSON version now. It's a pain in the butt to get through. Like, it's just annoying as crap. But luckily, the lovely person over at Fuzzworks has an automated system that just pulls it when there's a new one and converts it to SQL. So you can, if you know how to use SQL, or there's also a Postgres in here. I think there's a couple other ones. If you go over here to the latest, you can pull down a bunch of the latest stuff for in SQL format or CSV format, a bunch of other formats too, in a database format that you can then run queries against, which becomes far easier to navigate than trying to work your way through dozens and dozens of YAML files or JSON files and consume them and then process them and find what you're looking for. It's just a pain in the butt. I don't have any good example of this set up at the moment because my SQL server is turned off and hasn't been up for months. But if you know anything about SQL and databases, and you want to use the SDE, that is a perfectly good way to do it. Is to just put it on a local SQL and run it from there. You'll have to explore it for a little while to figure out how the schema works out, how the things are linked together. But once you start to learn how the tables are built, it becomes somewhat easier to use. It's not perfect, but it's an option. And unfortunately, that is the world we work with. That's pretty much how all of it's set up. We have to figure out these kinds of things. Now, there's one other option here, which is evref.net. Let's pull that one up right here. evref.net. Now, some of you, that doesn't, not the right address. That would be there. Some of you might have come here before looking up information, right? You come here, you say, hey, that Dagon guy, he's a pain in my butt. What am I supposed to do about him? Let me look up some information. Ah, that's a Dagon, not the Dagon guy. Okay, right? But so you come here, you look up information. You can get information about ships. You can get information about frigates or modules or even NPCs on this site. All of this information, everything on here, is generated and pulled from the SDE and the ESI and combines the two into this handy format. And it even has an API, if you want to call its API, to pull this information in JSON format very quickly and easily into your system, into whatever app you're using or building. And this is where you might find things like let's see, I want to keep an eye on implants and boosters and the ones in slot 1, and I want to keep an eye on mind flood. I want to be aware of where mind flood is and what it is. So now I have market groups 2493, which is going to be mind flood. 2488 is all of the booster 1 slots if I wanted to pull information about all of them. That's the ref number. That's the ID number for market groups. And I know it doesn't maybe mean much, but as you poke around in that secret information that I'm going to delete after this class, so it's okay. Eve developers Explorer. As you poke around in here, you might go down to the market and you might see, hey, get item groups. So if I want to get information about, let's say, just mind flood, I now know the ID number for mind flood because I found it through here. And in my program or in Excel, I can now pull this up and hey, well, this endpoint only just gets the item group, so that doesn't help us anymore. So let's see item group information. Ah, market group ID. Let's put in that and hit send. Hey, mind flood boosters types. That's the market group ID. Okay, so wow, market prices. Well, I think this is going to pull all of them. Right? Yeah, because it doesn't have a way for me to run it down. So, yeah, see, type ID 20, whatever that is. I would want to work in here for market prices for... Are we going to find it, or is it even going to be listed? Probably just passed it, didn't I? Yep. Doesn't seem to be there, but that's not surprising. But you would want to find the type ID. Oh, I locked the screen up. That's awesome. You want to find the type ID for 73248 or 2493 or whatever it is that we're looking for. And here's these average price for that based off of what? I'm not quite sure where that average price comes from. And you can see this route is cached for an hour. So it's going to be at least an hour out of date. When you're looking at market stuff, you can then follow over back to Fuzzworks because Fuzzworks is amazing. And if you're wanting to do something a little bit more like price checky and history wise, I think he's got in here. I thought there was material use DB. I thought he had a dump. Ah, there it is. Fuzzwork market data. So he's got a dump of all the market data over months and months and months and years now, actually. So you can pull up historical data through this information because the API is going to tell you current information, not historical as much. Though I think there is an endpoint for historical. But again, I'm not a market person, so I've never tried to use those endpoints and haven't really explored them. But those are things you're going to have to explore on your own to figure out how do I do these things? Where are the things? Where are the endpoints? And then I did mention you need a developer app. You can build one at developers.eveonline.com. Um, and you're going to need an app return URL. And I'll show you this, even though this is secret information. When you build a app, if you want people to log into it, you need to have one of these apps. So I have one for Alliance tools that I was building. I have one for my corp. I have one for an old thing that doesn't work anymore. And then I have this one I just created the other day. When you create it, it's going to ask you for the name, a description, what scopes it can have access to, and you should only accept the scopes that you are going to use if you're not using those scopes. This is for apps you're developing for other people to use, mind you. If it's just your own app, just take whatever. Then you're going to need a callback URL, and this callback URL is extremely important to be correct, because if the callback URL doesn't match where it goes back to, the request will fail and it will say, "Hey, that's not where your information, your token, is supposed to go." And then you're gonna have this client ID to request tokens, and this secret, which needs to stay secret, which is why this will be deleted in a half an hour or so. And this secret allows use of the tokens through a secret method. There's multiple methods of OAuth, and that's getting into the weeds. But some of them require a secret. Basically, web apps and stuff that have a database behind them would need the use of the client secret. And this app is how you're going to set up SSO if you ever need to. So we'll get back to that in a little bit. So a brief mention of Dogma. You might have seen this a couple of times here already. Dogma attributes, and then it'll say attribute ID, value, attribute ID, value. So Dogma is the various effects and mechanics an item exerts upon the Eve world. So understanding Dogma is only really needed if you want to get into the nitty gritty of simulation like Pyfa does, of the space pixel game we play. And you can get Dogma information through both the SDE and the ESI. And basically it's going to be like, hey, there's a Dogma ID for your analyzer virus strength bonus, and it's going to be an ID of 1918. So any module that gives you a bonus to your analyzer virus strength bonus is going to have a Dogma attribute with an attribute ID of 1918. So any module that gives you strength bonus to your virus will have this attribute ID 1918. And then the value is 10. So this particular one gives a plus 10 to your virus strength. I think this is off the Astero. Same with all of these. So, hey, do you get a bonus? What's your drone bandwidth? It's going to have an ID number and it's going to be 25 or whatever. Does this give a bonus to weapon disruption resistance or maybe a negative? That's how Dogma works. It is all of the effects, and those effects translate back into a actual mechanic in the game. It's a pain in the butt to navigate. It's really annoying. And if you don't have to do anything with simulation in what you're doing, I wouldn't worry about it. So a typical public ESI request flow. So this is for if you need information for that's public, market orders, station data, location information, just general information about the Eve universe, right? So you're going to need information on something. You're going to get the ID of something related from the SDE, from the Eve ref, from a universe/ID call. You'll call the appropriate endpoint. If the endpoint's public, which we're supposed to be here, you'll serialize the data into your code or whatever, or if Excel just comes back and does it for you automatically, and you do as you need, and then you repeat calls as information. Retrieve, serialize, process. Retrieve, serialize, process. I didn't include a slide on the OAuth, and so we'll pop over here. Do I have that open? Nope. I do not have that one open. So, if we pop over here to documentation, leave that one open so that I can go back and delete it. Nope. Guides and examples. And single sign-on. If you've never done any OAuth, don't worry about it. Unless you need that private information for your own personal app, you don't need it. And if you do need the private information and you're just doing something like processing your stuff, I would just go ahead and use Excel. It should be easier. But basically, there's a large thing here of documentation of how this works. Your application is going to say, hey, log in, and then it's going to generate, first of all, a URL that's going to say these are the scopes I need. This is the my client ID. This is all the things that I want, and here's my callback. And it's going to send that over. And as long as the callback matches your app, it's going to give the user the login page, and they'll log in. And if the login is successful, it'll send back a bunch of information, including a token that you, as the developer, will use to access their private data in their endpoints, and some refresh information and stuff like that. This is this lovely documentation page on there has code that's started for you. You can even switch to different languages, I think. Maybe not, but it's got code started for you. It's got a bunch of examples, so that if you know how to code at all, you can work through this page. I did it just the other day to prove a point, and yeah, it's not that difficult. Speaking of that, that's what this is. So this is the Eve example app that I built a couple days ago for this class, finally. And I'm going to switch over another window and run through this real quick. So, hopefully you should see my VS Code screen here, which this is that repo I linked at the beginning. If you have any code information, here you go. But basically, you need to set your client ID up into a environment variable. So there's this run first here, put your client ID in. And then once you do that, you can run the program. And let's say if you want to just try out a public one, I've got the get system jumps. So this is going to pull the system jump information. This is every system in the game and the jumps in since the last refresh, which should be about an hour usually. It's just going to loop over the top 5 and outpoint their name and the first 5 and output their name and the jumps. You don't need SSO for this at all. But here you go. So 7MD S1 had 18 jumps in the last hour, and Tidasha had 29. This list is much, much longer than 5, but I only looped it over 5 times, right? But also, if we wanted to do what the wallet looks like, so if I pull this wallet up, I don't have my WSL configured to actually open it, but we'll click on this link here, which will open up that you can't see yet. But it opens up your lovely change stream. Opens up your typical login, right? Click on here, authorize, and then it's going to pull it, right? And then as I go back to VS Code, VS Code. Okay, so here you can see it waiting for the callback. Came back to my local server that this code's set up. It's got the callback information. It exchanges the code for tokens. It saved the tokens for later, logged in, and then it pulled my wallet information. So, hey, Luxiana has 718 million in her wallet. Awesome. If I run that again, it's not going to log in because it already has the token information. It's going to pull it. And I'm not going to show you my actual tokens, but here you go. It's going to look like something like this. So, access token, which will have some long super secret value, and it uses that access token to get information. If that's expired, it'll use the refresh token to refresh that token again and pull it again. As long as your token is accepted on your account information, it's going to be able to refresh forever. If you want it to stop refreshing, you have to go to your account information and disable the tokens.